Let us understand the fourth topic of a fourth unit of paper 1, philosophical perspectives of education of bachelor of education. The fourth topic deals with the process of acquisition of language across curriculum. And the language across curriculum was emerged as a new way of thinking in the periphery of curriculum in the late 1970s and the early 1980s of the 20th century, which was originated in Great Britain, where the idea of linking language across curriculum with school language policies as a whole received a formal recognition in the popular Bullock Report. The report title is A Language for Life. The key principle is that language has a heuristic function. A child can learn by talking, writing, listening, reading, but language is not confined only to the so called fourfold linguistic skills LSRW. It is beyond that. How it will go, let us see. Language enables us to understand the concepts, exchange our ideas, and communicate our thoughts to others. Language acquisition is not confined to the language classroom, it also permeates into other subjects as well. The concept of language across the curriculum emphasizes the key role language play in the learning process. In our India, the National Curriculum Framework 2005 highlighted the role of language in learning as follows. Language is a constellation of skills, cuts across school subjects and disciplines. Speech and listening, reading and writing are all generalized skills, and children's mastery over language becomes the key factor affecting success at school. So unless the child gets mastery over the languages, the child's success rate also goes down. In many situations, all of these skills need to be used together. All the language skills need to be used together. This is why it is important to view language education as everybody's concern at school and not a responsibility of the language teacher alone. See, all the subject teachers also use a different kind of language in their respective subjects. So, as a result, the students will try to develop diverse vocabulary which are occurring in the study of other subjects. The National Curriculum Framework 2005 further says that language acquisition is not confined to the language classroom. A science, social science, or mathematics class is ipso facto a language class. So these subjects are also using a different and distinct vocabulary. So these subjects also should be treated as language classes. Learning the subject means learning the terminology of that particular subject, understanding the concepts in the of the subjects, and being able to discuss and write about them critically. So unless and until they acquire the special vocabulary that is used in a particular subject, they cannot acquire the subject knowledge and they cannot write about that particular discipline. Academic subjects vary in their vocabulary and mode of expressions. The type of syntax used in essays, reports, summaries, paragraphs, etc. They vary from subject to subject. And how these texts are structured and organized also varies from subject to subject. So, language and thinking are deeply connected, and that language promotes learning. Learning takes place when new facts are assimilated through listening and talking, reading and writing about what is being learnt, and by relating a new learning to what has been already learnt. Unless the students establish a connection between what they learned and what they are going to learn with the use of language, the students may not progress in learning the new things. For example, if a learner is asked by his teacher to prepare a project on an environmental issue, he will plan and structure the report and use both language competencies and subject specific ways of perception, observation, conceptualization, and finally communicate the same to his peers and teachers. This essentially implies that when a person is writing, that the content has to be accurate and appropriate, and also the language has to be appropriate and efficient. So, as a result, the language across curriculum advocates an understanding and transaction of curriculum based on the following premises. First thing is language is more than communication skills. Language is also linked to the thinking process. It is a tool for conceptualizing, thinking, and networking. It supports mental activity and exercise and brings cognitive precision and maturity. See, language acquiring process is a mental activity, and it also gives a lot of exercise to the brain, and it develops cognitive precision and maturity in the thoughts of the students. And this helps to express thoughts more lucidly and crystally. The more the perfection or mastery over the language the student gets, the more lucidly and crystally the children express their ideas and views. So that is why all the teachers, while they are explaining their subjects concepts, they should also focus on the particular vocabulary they are using to explain the concept. And the teacher should teach the children that to catch the special vocabulary that is being used to explain certain concepts. And language helps to structure discourse and practice discourse functions. So it structures discourse and practice discourse functions. Discourse means it is a kind of interaction between the students and teachers, and it helps the students to use their skills in language in various curricular areas. So this language helps them to use their vocabulary and language proficiency to understand the different subjects. And language across curriculum supports mental activity and exercise and brings cognitive precision maturity, just now I told you. And it helps the students to use their skills in language in various curricular areas. That means whatever the vocabulary or whatever the utterances that they are using in one subject can also be used in other subjects also. So, like this, learning a school subject is facilitated by language. So that's the reason language acquisition is given more importance, particularly in primary sections. See, the learner tends to use a particular type of language in a specific context, which is called a register. See, whatever the learner use a particular type of language in specific context, that is known as a register. That means while learning social studies, the student uses a type of language, and while learning mathematics, the students learns some specific vocabulary. So these kinds of specific language used in a specific context is known as a register. So learning a school subject involves learning its register. That means each subject will be having its own register of special vocabulary and unique uh, words. See, there are certain subjects which are having correlated words, see, like physics and mathematics. Many of the words which are used in mathematics can also be used in physics, and vice versa. So students need to learn the requirements in a particular subject area by understanding the specialized register of a particular discipline. So that's the reason the teachers should train the students to catch the specific vocabulary and specific language items that are regularly being used in teaching a particular subject. So the more the registers the students form, the more the efficiently the students will understand the subject. Understanding the specialized register of a particular subject enables students to produce written text. See, for example, lab reports, separate vocabulary has to be used, and separate structure of sentences that they have to use. And argumentative essays, such as in history and science, they have to use different register. And while writing summaries and synopsis, while reporting back to the teacher in the form of assignments, they have to use a different register of vocabulary. So here, register of a particular subjects need to be mastered. Specialized vocabulary, meaning of technical terms, grammatical and lexical features, syntax, etc. So these things have to be taught to the children. So as a result, that they will be enhancing their language ability, and the more the specific registers they develop, the more efficient the students will become in understanding the subjects. So the learner has to have command over academic language to learn the discipline. So to understand a particular subject requires and demands understanding its unique register of the vocabulary. So that the teachers, that's the reason it is said that every subject teacher is a language teacher also. Not only a language of like mother tongue or second language or national language or international language. Other subject teachers also they develop the vocabulary of the students, because every subject will have its own vocabulary. Every subject will have its own register of words. Different disciplines are mastered by using a special register and academic language. Academic language is characterized by linguistic features which are specific to academic disciplines, such as maths, arts, science, social science, and language. See, for example, in mathematics classrooms, language is required to be used in a particular way, which is different from how language used in science classroom. So, though certain commonalities are there, certain vocabulary is also distinct with respect to the mathematics as a branch of knowledge and physics as a branch of knowledge. That is why learning mathematics involves learning its register, as learning science or history involves learning registers of science and history. The language of a discipline does not only mean a list of vocabulary or specialized words with specific meanings, but the competence to communicate effectively and to contribute to the knowledge of the discipline. So the children should also acquire the ability to communicate about that particular subject. So that requires naturally getting mastery over the registers of that particular subject. For that, providing rich and varied language experiences related to disciplinary area and content is required. So every subject teacher first they need to introduce the specific and unique vocabulary that is being used in that particular subject, and the students also should be trained to use that particular specific vocabulary while writing their homework and while writing reports. Then only the students will get mastery over that subject. So teaching individual words relevant to the content by using props, gestures, images, role play, reading aloud, enactment of text, discussion, etc., should be taken place in the classroom. So this kind of interaction between the students and in a small group of students, the student should be encouraged to use that particular register of the vocabulary of that particular subject. So gradually they pick up all the unique vocabulary of that particular subject. And the teacher should also highlight the morphemes, prefixes, roots, suffixes to help the children to grasp the meanings of different difficult terms. And the process of acquisition of language across the curriculum necessitates providing some activities to foster word consciousness like word game, creation of word rich environment. So the teacher need to provide this kind of experience in the classroom. Sometimes once in a fortnight or once in a 10 days, a game has to be conducted in the class to use the same word and the words which are used in that particular subject. And the teachers should also create a word rich environment. So the more the vocabulary the teacher uses of that particular subject, the more the students receives the specific vocabulary of that particular subject. And providing right context to generate an understanding of the language specific to a discipline. So right context also should be created to make the children to use context specific language of that particular subject. And further, the teachers also should provide related activities so that students can be able to acquire skills of language efficiency, and they can have the opportunity to use them appropriately to decipher the meaning of the text and build the conceptual framework. So the more the experiences the teacher design and implement in the classroom with respect to using the specific registers of the subject, the better the children also develop the conceptual framework of that particular subject. Now let us see the further how the teacher can really design various activities to promote acquisition of language across the curriculum. The task of the teacher is to build cognitive and communicative competencies in the learners while teaching them specific subjects. So, first, the teacher should introduce a unique vocabulary to the students, and the teacher should also use that particular words extensively while giving the lessons. And teacher should also encourage the students to uh, what you call obtain the skill of using that particular vocabulary of that particular subject. And next, teachers need to know about the subject matter they teach beyond the specific topics of their curriculum. The teacher's role is not limited to only to transact the textbook prescribed content. The teacher should also stretch little further to add related concepts and related things of that particular lesson beyond the syllabus also sometimes, so that this will help the children to get ready for taking up the lessons of the next advanced class. See, for example, a history teacher needs to know not only the content of knowledge but also understand what history is, the nature of historical knowledge, the language used in history. These things will help the children to equip themselves with the registers of that particular subject, that is history. And next, the teacher should understand that he or she is a facilitator of language learning across the curriculum. He or she has to become a role model. The more the registers the teacher uses, the more the children acquires. Students also need to be motivated to learn the discipline by using the language properly. So it is not enough if you just make the children to understand the concepts of that particular subject. It is also necessary to make the children to uh, grab the specific vocabulary and the registry of different words that are used in that particular subject. And next, the students need to be made active participants in the process of acquisition of language across curriculum. See, unless the teacher motivates, the students won't participate in the what you call acquiring the language in that particular subject. So that's the reason on and off the teacher need to uh, provide certain experiences to the students such that they participate actively in picking up the special vocabulary of that particular subject and also extensively use while interacting with their classmates and while writing the record work and while submitting the assignments works and while writing the laboratory record. So see, if you mostly the teachers will be making the children to use the specific language while submitting the physics record, practical record, or chemistry practical record. In the same way, even mathematics and social science assignments also will be given to the students. And during this process, the teachers should encourage the children to use the registry of that particular subject invariably. Otherwise, the children try to write in their own sentences. See, to some extent, own sentences also can be encouraged, but the teacher should ensure that the students will sufficiently make use of the unique vocabulary of that particular subject. As a result, they can develop the language proficiencies in group work in a collective way. Thus, the constructive approach is the right solution to acquire the language tricks, to learn different concepts and sub-concepts embedded in a discipline or across the curriculum. See, this constructive approach is a very good approach to uh, develop the history of that particular subject. Students should be given some exercise that you think of how many words are related to this particular concept, and you think of and tell me back. This kind of constructivistic approach will make the students to undergo brainstorming and they come out with suitable vocabulary and suitable words and they express their views and ideas suitably by making use of the specific language of that particular subject. And the language of the learners will be used more creatively in the classroom. So, as creative as well, particularly in the language classes, certain word riddles, word puzzles are also conducted. In the same way, in other subjects also, the teachers can create certain riddles and puzzles wherein the children also come out with the answers. At the same time, children also can be motivated to design certain riddles and puzzles with the special vocabulary of that particular subject. For this, they need to be provided with a stimulating and nurturing environment in the school. See, the children always needs stimulating environment, so the teachers need to come out with some innovative and creative uh, sentences in that particular subject, and so the students also will acquire the same skill whatever is being used by the teachers. For this, teachers can use the two approaches to focus on the language acquisition by the students across the curriculum. See, first of all, first approach is enabling students to decipher that different subject areas draw on different sets of lexical and grammatical resources. Because for language subject, there are certain grammatical resources, and for other social sciences, there are certain other grammatical resources, and for sciences and mathematics. So, like this, the children should be enabled to construct their own disciplinary knowledge, values, and cultures with respect to that particular subject. See, for example, in physics, if you teach some covalent bond, then this is a kind of reciprocity of the electrons and protons, and how the covalent bond takes place. So these kinds of puzzling experience also can be provided to the students. Then they will automatically try to enhance their vocabulary of that particular subject. And second approach is helping students to decipher the variability of academic language, the general patterns of academic language, and to appreciate how these patterns find a place in different school subjects. Because the different academic subjects are having different vocabulary and different syntax, the students must be helped to identify the general patterns of academic language and other subjects vocabulary, and the children also should be made to appreciate how these patterns find a place in different school subjects. So this kind of exercise makes them to understand the vocabulary of one subject, and to also juxtapose with the vocabulary of the other subject. Like this, the students should take every care while teaching the subjects. It is not enough if they only explain the concepts, but also they should encourage the children to grasp the special vocabulary they are using, and the children also should be encouraged to make use of the same vocabulary while they are also interacting with the teacher. So this kind of interaction makes the students to make use of the specific language registry of in a subject, and they slowly go on multiplying their language abilities. See, when the student is talking about a science, the style of talking and the vocabulary that should be used is special. And when the students are asked to explain certain concepts of the social studies, and the social studies also will be carrying a certain different terminology and different words and different syntax, and these things must be made clear to students. And in mathematics, they will be using different terminology, which may be having some correlation with other subjects. So, in overall process of this acquiring the language of different subjects makes the students richer in understanding the subjects as well as developing the vocabulary of all the subjects. So that's the reason this language across curriculum has been focused by the educationists to help the children to acquire various skills of vertical communication and thinking, and even creation and innovation. See, if a student wants to create something new in the mathematics, the students should use the vocabulary of that particular subject only. Then only he can create something new. And in addition to this, the correlation among the different subjects and the correlation of different vocabulary should also be focused. So, like this, the students try to develop their capacity to think and capacity to innovate and capacity to understand the subjects in a better way. So, that is the reason this language across curriculum is emphasized. So, this language is not only limited to the language subjects but also uh, correlated with other subjects. Like this, if all the teachers collectively try to encourage the children to pick up specific language registers, then definitely the children will try to excel in their studies and enhance their capacity to think and to do the projects and to innovate in that particular subject.